And like you said, Royce, having a brother like Hollis was an amazing inspiration for me, kept me on my toes for a long time. And then I came to the States and back, and then I see there's Rickson already running the show. You know what I'm saying? When I came back, a few times that I came to spend vacations here, you can see Rickson's growth, and eventually became this machine that is just, there's nothing like it. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely unique individual. And then Royce comes along. You know what I'm saying? The little old Royce, and nobody had faith in him, had come to Brazil, to the United States. In fact, I brought Royce to the States to help me babysit my kids. He came to live with me when I was 17 years old. The reason I brought Royce, he said, I had come to Brazil with my wife at the time, with the kids, and he was very playful. He was probably 13, 14 years old at the time, playing with the kids, easygoing. You know how he is, as mellow it is, a little, easygoing kid, very quiet and stuff like that. Helped me take care of my kids while I was in Rio. And then when I came back to the States, we started saying, gosh, it would be nice maybe to have all my brothers here. The original plan was to bring each one of them to spend 6 months with me and then go back to Brazil. So I talked to my dad. He said, sure, take your brothers with you, anybody you want. So Royce said, I would like to go. So I brought Royce to spend 6 months with me. And he actually literally, helping change the diapers, run around with the kids, because I had started teaching class in my garage. And I'm having kids, at the time, got married again in the United States. And as I'm having kids, the wife is going crazy with the kids and that kind of stuff. So Royce was helping around, changing diapers and babysitting, taking the kids to the beach and doing that kind of stuff. And then spent 10 years with me, but the first 6 months that he was going to be here, then I bring somebody else in his place. When the 6 months come up, Royce said, I don't want to go back. I want to stay with you. I said, okay, Royce, take another 6 months and let's see what happens. And that stretched more and more and more and eventually stayed with me for, like 10 years or something like that. And when the UFC came along, I said, Royce, there's no idea of the UFC is happening, this and that. And I said, Royce, you're fighting tomorrow. He looked at me and said, okay. It's like, okay, another day. Yeah, so it was very
We're going to get there. I have briefly a lot of experience in the Chuel. It's something that a lot of things we carry that forever, for sure. Then, as you mentioned, Rorion, you end up having your adventure or decision to come to America. How was the early days here? Because I remember, I don't think you opened this school right away.
No.
If I can mention, I saw a lot of TV shows back in Brazil that I saw you TV shows.
That's right.
And I know that was after you opened the school, but one of the proudest moments I felt in my life with Jiu-Jitsu and knowing you was when you did the fight scene for the Lethal Weapon 1, the first one with Mel Gibson.
Yes.
That was such a huge thing on the whole family in Brazil that felt like, man, you know what? He made it. That was the feeling we had. It was not even the beginning of what you did. But staying sitting in the movie theater, just see the credits and see Jiu-Jitsu,
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
Rorion Gracie. I have such a vivid memory of that. How happy and how proud all of us there felt for what you just, as first small step, for what you became and represent to all of us. How was the early days in America before Jiu-Jitsu?
The early days in America, man, they were good, tough ones, It made me who I am, I think. Part of this was like to be, cooked on a hot fire. I first came here in 1969 to spend a month vacation. Like I said, I started teaching very early. By 17, I had saved a little bit of money. Then I had that talk with Hollish, and I came to the United States to spend a month here. I decided to stay at the YMCA in Hollywood to save money. It's a very cheap place to stay. And for security reasons, decided not to leave my cash and my return ticket in my room. So I asked the receptionist at the YMCA to keep the money on their safe, which the guy did. A week later, when I went to get, some more money for, daily expenses, I find out that the receptionist had stolen my cash and my ticket to Brazil. He took that out. So I called the manager. He said, I'm very sorry about that. I'm going to give you, a little bit of money to buy a sandwich, but I'm not buying you a new ticket to Brazil. Call the airline company. Now, in 1969, there was no computers, no telephone, nothing like this. You can't print a new ticket on the spot. So they told me that I would have to wait for 6 months to make sure nobody used my ticket so they could give me a new ticket to Brazil. So on that note, I did not want to worry my father back in Brazil, so I called the old man and said, Dad, guess what? I love America. I changed my mind. Instead of staying here for a month, I want to stay here for at least 6 months. Is everything okay? I said, everything is okay. Okay, so all right, have fun. I'll talk to you later. Click. I had no money. I didn't speak English, didn't know anybody, and no ticket to Brazil. So I started looking for work, and at the YMCA where I was staying, there was an old judo instructor by the name of Bob Ota, a Japanese guy, who was teaching classes over there. And I, was friendly with the guy. I sparred with him a couple of times, and I kind of submitted the guy, even though I was very young. He was very impressed with me. And then I said, listen, I'm looking for work. And he got me a job working at a restaurant here in Los Angeles. And I worked at the restaurant, and then made some money, made some friends. And then my trip, that was going to be a month long, like I said, it stretched to a 6 month long trip. And I eventually find myself going to Hawaii. And when I got to Hawaii, I ran out of cash. I find myself literally panhandling on the street corners in Hawaii, asking for a spare change so I could eat, sleep in a newspaper on a sidewalk for a few days. But all that, it was just made me stronger. It made me know that I can make it. Anyways, a year after the whole trip started, 1 year later, I went back to Brazil. And all I could think about, even though I had some ups and downs, it was a fascinating experience. I made some good friends. I felt really confident about my possibilities after that. So after 1 year in Brazil, in America, I came back to Brazil, saved money for 2 years, came back again in 1972 to visit some friends for a few months. Then went back to Brazil, went to law school, graduated law school at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, Universidade Federal. And after finishing law school, I decided to come back to the States this time with the objective of sharing jiu-jitsu with the rest of the world. Now, initially, I didn't have an academy or a house or anything like that, so I stayed with a friend of mine that I met on a previous trip. And the family was kind enough to let me stay there. His mother would go to work. She was an actress. She would go to work in the studios, and I'll be home alone. But instead of being home doing nothing, I'll be washing the windows, cutting the grass, cleaning the bathrooms, cooking dinner, anything I could do to show appreciation for her letting me stay at her place. Eventually, I started looking for work. And she said, what do you want to do? I said, anything. Do you want to clean people's homes? I said, of course. So she said, listen, start calling her friends, everybody in the movie business, say, Rorion does a great cleaning work. Oh, send him over here, over here. Everybody calling me to do cleaning their house, right? And so I'm going to clean people's houses. And eventually, I landed on the house of a woman whose husband was the assistant director of that TV show Starsky and Hutch, the two policemen.
I know.
Yeah. So the lady saw me 40 years ago, say, hey, you're a good looking guy. How come you're not in the movie business? I said, that's right. How come I'm not in the movie business? She said, why don't you take some pictures and I'll talk to my husband. He'll take you to a casting office and you're going to start doing extra work. So I hung up my broom and I started doing extra work. Fantasy Island, Hill Street Blues, Heart to Heart, The Love Boat, and all those shows, Quincy, Simon and Simon, the Rockford Files. And I started doing those shows. And while working as an extra, one day, I'm working on the set of Lethal Weapon as an extra. And I had a match against a guy by the name of Ralph Alegria, who was a former kickboxing champ. In fact, the fight is on the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu in action match. And I had a match with him, and I choked him out in a couple of minutes here on a Carson gym in Torrance. And the assistant production guy from Lethal Weapon had watched that fight live because he was into martial arts. So on the set of Lethal Weapon, where the director, Dick Donner, started saying, wait a minute, what's the best kind of fighting in the world? Why is Mel Gibson on Lethal Weapon? This guy, Willie, said, hey, the best kind of fighting is Brazilian or Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And we have the only guy in the country who knows about it, who teaches this stuff. Because at that time, I was teaching classes out of my garage. And then Dick Donner hired me to teach Mel Gibson on the spot. So, okay, bring the guy in. So he hired me to teach Mel Gibson. And I started choreographing the fights for Mel Gibson. And that's what eventually led to the scene you talked about. But I started teaching classes out of my garage. And while I'm teaching classes out of my garage, it didn't take long that some of the students would say, Rorion, my former karate instructor, or kung fu, or taekwondo, or wrestling, or judo, or boxing, they are jealous that I'm doing jiu-jitsu with you now. They think that their martial arts is better than you. They want to challenge you to a fight. Would you accept that? I said, of course, bring it in. So they would bring their martial arts instructors to my garage to fight me. And I would tell all my students, hey, guys, Wednesday night, 7 o'clock, a karate guy is coming to fight me. And all these students will pile up in the garage to see the action. Of course, people don't want to miss that. So the guys would come to fight me for the no-holds-barred fighting in this garage. It's piled up people watching, everybody watching that. The guy would walk in not knowing what's going on. And then invariably, as you know, jiu-jitsu would give us the elements of control the guys in a very humane way. I didn't have to beat anybody to a pulp. I didn't have to hurt anyone. The guys get you to punch and kick. You run in, you get into a clinch, you put them on the ground lovingly, very kindly put mount on top of him, control the guy. He's going to try to escape the mount. He doesn't know. As we say in Brazil, in a blind man's land, he who has one eye is king. So the guy had no idea. So I controlled the guy and do it a couple of times. He said, God, this is fascinating. Can I learn? I said, sure, champ, sign here. And so 90% of the people that came to beat me up became friends of mine and students of mine. And that's how the West was won. So I spent 10 years doing this kind of stuff, Jean. And on a period of 10 years, I had literally hundreds of challenge matches over and over. Oh, I'm bringing someone tonight, sure. And that's like all the time, all different styles, over and over. It got to a point that I said, it's never going to end. There's 250 million people in the United States. So I said, you know what? We're going to make this thing big time to the world. By that time, I had just moved to the new school that we had in Torrance, that opened up from the garage to the new academy. And we had challenge matches on the garage, and then we had challenge matches at the academy. Some of those you can see on the Gracie Jiu-jitsu in action videos all over the place. And then those matches happened, and then Royce came in, we opened up the academy, and Royce was already there, and then Hickson and the whole thing. So we opened the academy, and the whole thing exploded. A couple of years later, I said, you know what, the challenge matches keep happening. I said, we have to show this to a much larger audience. And then my partner at the time said, we have to go television. I said, well, let's go television. And that's when the idea of the UFC came about. We created the UFC, and boom, the rest is like history.
Man, that's incredible, because did you feel difficult? I would say, I don't know if the right word to say establish jiu-jitsu among other martial arts styles, because jiu-jitsu, I think, brought reality into martial arts.
That's the idea. That was exactly the idea. Yeah.
Everything was theatrical.
Theatrical, because, of course, and like you and me, everybody else, we see, with all due respect, Bruce Lee was a genius, Chuck Norris, those guys are amazing guys. But what they do in the movies is choreographed. We know that, and they know that. But the world, a lot of times, didn't know that. They didn't realize that. So I'm watching those guys fighting 20, 30 people. I said, this is not real. Come on, guys. So when we had the matches at the academy, more and more, the audience got to a point that wouldn't fit in the academy anymore. Just people bringing friends to see it. And I said, we have to change this. And that's when the idea of putting the UFC on a large scale came about. But in the beginning, it was extremely difficult to change people's minds on that. They always thought it was luck. You know how it is. You spar with someone from a different martial art, they think, it was luck. I want to do it again and again and again. It's hard to show the reality. And the purpose of the UFC was exactly that, to show that between different styles of martial arts, no holds barred, they fight each other in loose single elimination tournament. Royce goes in there and puts on the show. It was, that was a wake-up call to everybody. It was the martial arts before the UFC and after the UFC.
It's incredible, and I know all of us from my generation, I say that it's represent all the jiu-jitsu community. It's no words that I can describe or thank you for everything that you went through to make possible to continue the legacy of the family and pass on to other members of the family. But not only that, made this whole change in the world. Because a lot of people in the world today are able to live their lives, to be healthier, to eat, to make their money to live because of jiu-jitsu. But I know each one of the family has their contribution, and some of them more than others. And I think you had that vision, and you carry on something that we don't see anybody in the family that could do what you did at the time that you did, to open not a door, you open a gate, very big gate, that not only the family members, but a lot of people in the world are able to live a much better life, And How
are you, man? Hey, get the fight!